This is the Pacific Ring of Fire, a horseshoe-shaped belt around the basin of the Pacific Ocean, where volcanoes and earthquakes are, shall we say, particularly fond of happening. In fact, nearly 3/4 of the world's earthquakes happen within this zone, and about 75% of the planet's active volcanoes are also located here. And recently, it seems like some of those volcanoes might be waking up because of the quakes. Listen, we know that the Ring of Fire exists because of the weird dance that the Pacific Plate and the plates surrounding it do on the Earth's surface. But we haven't always known exactly what was going on down there. And even now, we're still figuring out all the details. So could these recent volcanic eruptions really just be the Earth rearranging its tectonic plates yet again? Let's dig into it. The Pacific Ring of Fire is what we call an orogeny belt. That's fancy scientists speak for a region where the Earth's crust is literally crumpling and buckling because of all the plate tectonics action happening there. More specifically, it's a convergent plate boundary where two or more tectonic plates meet and collide. And in the case of the Pacific Ring of Fire, it's mostly the Pacific Plate converging with the North American, Australian, Eurasian, and Philippine sea plates. Now, the reason why this is such a hot spot for both seismic and volcanic activity is because of how these plates interact with each other. You see, the Pacific Plate is slowly but surely sliding beneath the rest of them, a process we call subduction. And since the plates are stuck together at many points, when the forces of the mantle try to pull them apart, they get stuck, and stress builds up. Eventually, the stress gets so great that the rocks break, releasing energy in the form of an earthquake. And if the rocks break in the right way, that sudden release of energy can also trigger a volcano to blow. In general, volcanoes form when rock deep in the earth melts and recools in a new configuration near the surface. And part of the reason that happens in the Ring of Fire is because as the Pacific Plate is shoved into the planet, all the rock layers get superheated and start oozing upward like melted cheese on a hot rock. Of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but you get the idea. Scientists know that most of the volcanoes along the Ring of Fire are the result of subduction. But until recently, they weren't sure exactly how much the quakes were contributing to the eruptions. Because even though we have a good idea of the order in which the major events in the Ring of Fire have happened, it's hard to date the quakes themselves. That's partially because dating rocks is hard, and also because, unlike trees, rocks don't always keep good records of their ages on them. But a paper published in August of 2023 might change all of that. The researchers found a way to date the quakes along the southernmost part of the Ring of Fire, the area known as the Circum-Pacific Belt. By looking at the age of pieces of sediment carried up by the volcanoes during their eruptions, they dated 48 volcanic ash layers that had been preserved in the sediments of New Zealand's North and South Islands. Then they compared the ages of these layers with the ages of the earthquakes that occurred in the same area. What they found was that volcanic eruptions tended to happen before the big earthquakes, usually by a few years, but sometimes by as many as 100. This is important because it helps scientists better understand the relationship between earthquakes and volcanic activity in the Ring of Fire. It also helps them keep tabs on which volcanoes might erupt next. There's plenty of evidence that megathrust quakes can trigger volcanic eruptions. For example, in 2011, a magnitude 9 quake off the coast of Japan triggered an eruption at the nearby Mount Ibu in Indonesia. Similarly, a magnitude 7.9 quake that hit near Java, Indonesia in 2006 preceded an eruption at Mount Merapi, also in Indonesia. But while it's clear that the quakes and the eruptions are related, the exact mechanism behind that relationship isn't fully understood. One theory is that the quakes physically nudge the volcanoes, jostling them into erupting. Another theory is that the quakes cause the magma chambers below the volcanoes to suddenly drain, triggering the eruptions. And finally, there's the possibility that the quakes somehow lower the pressure in the magma chambers, allowing the magma to rise and spill out. Each of these scenarios is supported by at least one example in the Ring of Fire. For instance, after the 2009 L'Aquila earthquake in Italy, scientists noticed that the frequency of eruptions at nearby volcanoes increased. They think that the earthquake may have lowered the pressure in the magma chambers, allowing more magma to reach the surface. On the other hand, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, which had a magnitude of 9, triggered an eruption at Mount Ibu in Indonesia, which was more than 3,000 kilometers away. That suggests that the physical jolt from the earthquake played a bigger role in triggering the eruption than changes in magma chamber pressure. So, as you can see, things aren't as cut and dry as quakes equal volcanoes. Now, knowing that megathrust quakes tend to come before volcanic eruptions, can scientists predict when these eruptions will happen? Well, maybe. You see, predicting volcanic eruptions is already a tricky business, even when you have some warning signs. But studies like the one in New Zealand help scientists build better models of volcanic activity in the Ring of Fire. For example, scientists now know that the probability of an eruption increases after a large earthquake. So if there's a huge quake in the Ring of Fire, scientists can keep a closer eye on the volcanoes in the area, just in case. Of course, it would be even better if we could predict the eruptions themselves, rather than just being generally prepared for them. And while that's possible for some volcanoes, like Mount Vesuvius in Italy, the lead time can be less than 24 hours. Not exactly enough time to pack a bag and get out of town. As scientists continue to study the relationship between earthquakes and volcanic activity in the Ring of Fire, they hope to develop better tools for predicting eruptions. These tools could help people living near volcanoes in the Ring of Fire better prepare for potential eruptions and hopefully reduce the loss of life and property caused by volcanic activity. And to be fair, we've got our work cut out for us. Just look at this map of the Ring of Fire. There are a ton of volcanoes in this area. But even though it might seem like there's no way we'll ever understand this whole Ring of Fire thing, it's worth trying because it's not just knowledge for knowledge's sake. Understanding the forces that shape our planet could ultimately help us better prepare for and mitigate the effects of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Because even though we live on a dynamic and sometimes volatile planet, that's also what makes it such a fascinating place to live. The art of making delicious, nutritious food is a deceptively complex one. For example, you might want to eat healthy, but unhealthy food just tastes so much better. Or you might know that eating meat is bad for the planet, but cooking a veggie burger just doesn't hit the spot. And for a lot of folks, cutting meat out of their diet means giving up a lot of beloved meals and traditions. Thanks for watching this CI Show video.